Hello, hello, hello. Hey, hey, it's Jennifer Palmer, and you're listening to the Welly Walk podcast. Thanks for coming out and joining me again today. Today is, it's February. Yay, jazz hands. It's February. January is behind us. The days are getting longer. There are flowers coming out in the garden. I know, sorry for those of you who are in Maine or Minnesota, places where it's all snow right now, but we've got snowdrops here. We even have daffodils, which is crazy pants and just goes to show climate change. So yeah, that's not normal here. If you listened to the last episode, we talked about January and the January blues and the most depressing day of the year and all the things that are coming down upon our heads in January, and how to keep our heads held high, and how maybe to foster a new relationship, a more giving, gentler, kinder, more understanding relationship with January. So that was the last episode. And I'll remind you of my edict that I've given myself for 2026, which is the difference between your expectations and your reality is your happiness. And you want that difference to be small. And then your happiness is big. So mind the gap. But this episode, we're going to go back and finish up our Sleep Science Odyssey, our 3-part series on sleep. The first episode was all about the architecture of our sleep. What is sleep actually? What is it doing for us? What's happening across the night? The next episode was all about how we affect our ability to sleep by what we do during the day. And we started to look at sleep hygiene. This episode is going to be a little bit more sleep hygiene. We're going to talk a little bit also about the menopause and the perimenopause and how sleep is affected for us ladies in midlife, which can create all kinds of issues. So what can we do about it? I also want to touch upon dreams and napping and how beneficial these things are for creativity and emotional therapy, and also should we be analyzing our dreams? So stay tuned. I talked to my sister a little bit about just my feelings of like, did I go off on a real tangent with the sleep stuff? And she said, yeah, it was a bit TED talky and she preferred the other episodes. But the thing is, she is one of the best sleepers I've ever met, so it's not something she's worried about. For me, I really wanted to give you this triptych on sleep to help anyone who's having trouble, because the odds are at some point in your life you will have trouble with your sleep, and you probably know somebody who is having trouble with their sleep. And it has been so transformative for me. It is the bedrock of our health, our sleep. And my life has been so much more improved since I prioritized sleep. And now I feel like I'm friends with sleep. We're not deadly enemies anymore. We're not foes. And I'm reaping the benefits of this relationship. So that's why we've gone off on this odyssey of sleep. And I hope that you will enjoy this episode as much as I have enjoyed learning about these things. So buckle up. Let's get going. I want to start out this episode by telling you a couple anecdotes around a subject that Matthew Walker is particularly passionate about. And I'll remind you, Matthew Walker is my psychopomp of sleep. He wrote the book Why We Sleep, which is a great Bible all about sleep if you want it. Go out and get it. It's fantastic. He also has a podcast all about sleep with short 20-minute episodes. And so if there's something that you want to know more about, odds are he will cover it and you can find it. And it's through him and Andrew Huberman, who have a 6-part series where they talk about sleep. And then Andrew Huberman has his own episodes all about sleep and how you can biohack it. He's the ultimate biohacker. So these are all resources I've been putting in the show notes. I'll put them in the show notes again for this episode. And so you have resources for yourself. But Matthew Walker talks about school start times, and he's been pivotal in actually changing the laws around school start times in California. And I know New York State has shifted school start times, and I think Florida was starting to do it as well. And I want us to look at this because it's so interesting. I just think about this all the time and what an effect this has had. And it just goes to show you how much we have in our power to help ourselves just by valuing sleep and scheduling things accordingly and listening to biology. And we have to change. We have to change our institutions. We have to change the way things work as science progresses and as we understand things better, so we can become better and we can reach higher potential, all of us, and allow our children to flourish, allow ourselves to flourish. So the subject is school start times in America. And maybe this is why Matthew Walker was shocked when he moved to America. School start times in general are about 7:30 in the morning, which of course is because parents have to get to work. And back in the Industrial Revolution, they would have had to get to work really early, and people had to go to the farm, be up and working on the farm really early. So the kids had to get out of the house and get to school. But the problem with 7:30 in the morning is that those kids have to get up earlier than their biology wants them to get up. And this is because the circadian rhythm of teenagers is different than that of children and different from adults. The circadian rhythm of teenagers dictates that they want to go to bed later in the evening and they want to sleep in later in the morning compared to adults and compared to children. And so if you understand this, then you think, okay, my child is not just pushing against me and being stubborn, not wanting to go to sleep. They aren't able to fall asleep because biologically their circadian rhythm doesn't want them to fall asleep yet. And then when they sleep in the morning, it's not that they're being lazy. Well, sometimes, let's be honest, it is. But a little bit of that, a good smidgen of that, is the fact that they need to sleep in later in order to get all the sleep that they need for their brain. And their brain is doing all this crazy stuff. When they were kids, they were sponges and they were making all of these neural pathways. And when they're teenagers, they're starting to fine tune all those pathways. And there's so much that goes on while they sleep. They need their sleep to reach their potential, to flourish. They need sleep. So when we ask them to be at school at 7:30 in the morning, I think back to myself when I was a teenager, and I was always late for school, even though I lived 10 minutes away. I found it so difficult to wake up at 6:30 in the morning and claw open my eyes and take a shower and try to draw myself downstairs, dragging my feet, make some breakfast, get dressed, and organize myself and get out of the house. And I was always late. And my mom, even though I could walk to school in 10 minutes, my mom would usually have to drive me, and then I'd have to sign in at the reception desk that I was late, walk of shame past the principal's office, and everyone's already in their classrooms. And then I remember sitting there, especially in band. I don't know why I was always looking at the clock in band, but it wouldn't even be 8 o'clock yet, and we'd just be starting things. And I'm like, oh my God, it's so early in the morning. Luckily, in the UK, school start times are more like 8:30, but it's still really tough. So what does this do? Some kids, I was lucky to live 10 minutes away. Other kids who have to take the bus will have to get the bus 2 hours before school starts. So if school starts at 7:30, they're being picked up at 5:30 in the morning. They're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And odds are their circadian rhythm isn't allowing them to fall asleep until 11 o'clock, midnight. They're getting 5 hours of sleep if they're lucky. And that's not enough sleep. If we learned anything from the last 2 episodes about sleep, that is insufficient sleep. They're sleep deprived and they cannot function, and their brain is not going to be able to do all the wonderful things that is required of it, especially when you're trying to cram all this school textbook learning in and you're going to make them take SATs and give them all the pressure of trying to get into a university or go someplace else and make something of themselves. Their confidence is going to be lagging because they're not going to have the motivation. They're not going to have focus. They're not going to have attention. They're not going to have the speed. There's all these studies that show if you don't get enough sleep, you cannot perform physically with sports, your jump height is lessened. Your chances of getting injured are much greater. You can see it's like an exponential curve, I believe, of how many hours of sleep you get and your chances of getting a injury. And they've done studies of basketball teams and giving one team more sleep and seeing how the scores change. And it is obvious that the more sleep you get, the better you can do physically. And then mentally as well. We know this. You need sleep in order to consolidate memories and to learn things. So interesting anecdote that Matthew Walker talks about. There is a suburb of Minneapolis, and let's give a little shout out, take a minute to bow our heads to Minneapolis, who's been under it, who's been really dealing with a lot of bad stuff from the current administration. I don't like to get into politics here, but there's been 2 murders of peaceful protesters, and it's all crazy. So I just want to give my shout out to Minneapolis while we're talking about them. And it's all in the news here in the UK. You guys can rest assured that we are watching you and in awe, and that you guys are proving to be an amazing force to be reckoned with as a community, civic-minded, sticking up for each other, and you are a great example for the human race. So anyway, that's my little spiel. Thank you, Minneapolis. We love you. So Edna, Minneapolis. Edna's a suburb in Minneapolis. And they wanted to see what would happen if they shifted the school start times to an hour later. So they did have 7:20 school start time. Ouch. And they decided to make it 8:30. And the way that they were going to see as their kind of barometer of change was they were going to look at the SAT scores, the average for the top 10% of students who were performing academically at the top 10% in the school. What were their SAT scores in previous years? And what are their SAT scores once they have an hour more sleep? And it will not surprise you that it improved. And it improved by quite a bit. Previously, when they were having to get to school at 7:20 in the morning, their SAT score average was 1288. And for those of you who don't know about SAT scores, that's a good SAT score. And we're talking about the top 10% of academic performers in that school. So great. But when they get an extra hour of sleep, that score went up to 1500, which is really good. And the difference there is between getting into a top tier school and the next tier down, which can change the trajectory of your life and your career and your confidence and all kinds of stuff. It would be the difference between me getting into my first choice, which I did not get into my first choice of school, and getting into my second choice of school, which I did. And so I think about this a lot. Like, if I had only had a little bit more sleep and I had all kinds of issues when I was in high school. I mean, I was anorexic, I was depressed, I had lots of mental health issues, I had a lot of self-confidence issues, but also I had this foggy head. I had brain fog all the time, and I felt like I couldn't think, and I couldn't think to my full potential. I knew I had potential. I knew I could, but I couldn't organize my thoughts, and I got depressed and all this stuff. And now I know that sleep could have been something to do with that. And they did see this. Beyond the test scores, they saw that student mental health improved. The number of mental health issues went down. Suicidality went down. And along these lines, student mortality rate went down, which meant that there were fewer teenagers, who died. And the 2 main causes of death for teenagers are car accidents is the first, and suicide is the second. So suicidality went down, but also car accidents went down. And there's another school district, which was in Teton County, Wyoming, who did this, and they made the school start times even later. And they saw a 70% decrease in the number of car accidents. And then also across these 2 places, they also saw that truancy rates went down and teenage crime went down as well, because kids were not hanging around for hours after school. School got out later, which was closer to when they were supposed to be home, so they didn't have time to just be wandering around the mall with their pockets. So, and Matthew Walker jokes that you could pay for all of the education system with the money saved from teenage crime going down. But I think this is emblematic of what we can do for ourselves, what we can do for our children. The more sleep you can get, then you have better attention. You're not as apt to have accidents. Mental health is better. Your ability to function intellectually is better. Your ability to function physically is better. So we just need to keep this in mind for all of us. And as a society, we can rise ourselves up. As a species, we can rise ourselves up just by valuing sleep and changing the schedule a little bit. So I'm just putting it out there. So also, I want to talk a little bit here about smartphones and a little bit about LED lit devices, tablets and whatnot, computers, laptops that you might be taking to bed with you. Yes, we might gift our children an extra hour of sleep if we can change school start times, but what if they squander that time by looking at screens before bed? What happens? And as with the previous anecdote, we can also translate this to our own behavior. What is happening to us if we're scrolling on our phones, looking at an LED lit screen before bed? Well, Matthew Walker can tell us. In his book, he talks about a study where they had two groups. One group was going to read in an old-fashioned book, just looking at print on paper for 2 hours. The other group was going to read on an LED-lit tablet for 2 hours. And what happened? What do you think happened? Yes, it was not good for the people who were reading on the LED device. Their melatonin, and I'll remind you, melatonin is the signal that our suprachiasmatic nucleus releases to tell the brain that it is nighttime, it is dark, and it is time to be sleeping. Because our brain is in a locked box. It doesn't have anything to go off of except for the signals that we get from our senses. Your eyes have sensors that connect to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. When these sensors see light, it tells the suprachiasmatic nucleus what time of the day is. It can read the quality of the light. And the problem with LED lights, and we talked about this last time in the the last sleep science episode, the problem with LED lights is it mimics morning sunlight. It has a very high concentration of blues and greens, and that tells your suprachiasmatic nucleus that it is still daytime, it is not nighttime, and so it does not release melatonin, or it doesn't tell the pineal gland to release melatonin, if we're going to be technical about it, which then signals to the brain it's time to start getting everyone ready to go to sleep. So that signal isn't happening. And if the melatonin isn't coming, you're not falling asleep. You're going to have a really hard time at least. So what happened to those people who were looking at the device? They had their melatonin release suppressed by 50%. And their melatonin wasn't released. There was a delay on the release by 3 hours. So the melatonin wasn't getting released until the middle of the morning hours. And what was the result the next day? They felt underslept, unrefreshed. They had trouble performing the tasks that they needed to do. And this actually carried on to the next couple days. They had a bit of a hangover of this. This affected their sleep for several days, just from that one bout of reading for 2 hours on an LED screen. So keep this in mind when you're thinking about your phone being near you at bedtime and looking at your phone before bed. Think about this with your teenagers. Think about this with your kids. Keep them away from LED screens before bed. So what do we do? Let's get back. This is a great segue now. Naturally, we're going to get back into some of the sleep hygiene. So one of the best things that you can do for yourself is give yourself a wind down routine. So if you might remember, we talked in the last episode about kind of the big 5 sleep edicts from Matthew Walker, his sleep hygiene big 5. The first one was regularity, making sure that you're going to sleep at the same time every day and you're waking up at the same time every day. The next one was about recognizing the power of light and darkness on our sleep. So this goes back to that LED screen and the fact that we don't want to confuse our brain with what time of day it is. And the LED lights are doing that to us. And we want to think about it being dark while we sleep, really dark. And we also want to leverage daylight and try to get as much light during the day into our eyes. Sunlight, being outside in the sun or the rain as it is here, wherever there's still sun out there, it's still coming through the clouds and it's still going to inform our circadian rhythm. So that's using light and darkness to strengthen and feed our sleep. Then we talked about body temperature and how your body has to cool down and stay cool to stay asleep. And when our body warms up, it's a signal to wake us up. So we have to manage our sleep environments, manage how cold, how hot we feel while we're sleeping, and we can leverage body temperature to wake us up in the morning, and we can leverage it to help us to fall asleep in the evening this way. Go back and listen to that other episode if you need more explanation, but I'm just trying to remind you of some things. The next thing was to walk it out, which was a horrible one, meaning that if you're in bed with insomniac type of tendencies. So if you end up awake, not able to fall asleep once you're trying to fall asleep for more than 20 minutes, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep for more than 20 minutes, it's a good idea to get up and go someplace else and do something soporific. Read a book, listen to a soporific podcast or a sleep story until you again feel like you're just about to go to sleep, like really heavy sleep pressure. And then you go back upstairs and get into bed and turn off the light and close your eyes. And hopefully you'll go back to sleep. And then we also remember the 5th edict was about being mindful with your caffeine and your alcohol and knowing how much caffeine will affect your sleep. It's affecting your adenosine, your sleep pressure, and how much alcohol disrupts your sleep. And there's no safe amount of alcohol with sleep. It is going to be messed up if you drink alcohol. And so we have to be mindful about all these things. So now I'm telling you about a wind down routine. Wind down routines help us because if you remember our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest, versus our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight, and also kind of the system that we want to be in the morning when we want to be getting things done. We want to have cortisol on our side, but then we want to manipulate things so by the end of the day, when we're starting to think about sleep, we don't have any cortisol getting near us. We don't have any of that fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system. I think of the sympathetic nervous system kind of like Tony the tiger. That's just the character that pops into my head when I think about it. And he's like well-meaning and he wants to like, great, let's get going with the day. But if he shows up, if he pops up at night before bed, it's not a good thing. He's disrupting your ability to sleep. He's distracting you. And so we want him to, go to his trailer and go hang out until the next morning. We don't want him to show up. Know that his job is in the morning time through midday, but then, he's going to want to take a back seat now. And then you want your parasympathetic nervous system, Again, I don't know what accent that is, but that's how I like to say parasympathetic nervous system. And for me, that's more like a ragdoll cat. If anyone knows what a ragdoll cat is like, they are like those floppy, big, fluffy kitties that people hang over their shoulders like they've got a stole, a fur stole. And they're really a bit pathetic. And they just want to lie there and they're all floppy. And that's what we want. We want our parasympathetic nervous system to come into play and be that ragdoll cat towards the end of the day. We want to foster this. These are the cats of our nervous system. Tony the tiger in the morning and ragdoll at night. And so our wind down routine should help us to get into this ragdoll state. We want to take away all the stressful things. Close your laptop. Don't look at emails. Don't look at the news. Don't listen to the news. You want to get all of that busy worrying, all those busy worrying, stressful thoughts, and you want to put them somewhere else. And this can be easier said than done. So think about things that help you to relax. Think about maybe you want to sit with your partner and watch some TV, but make sure it's nothing too exciting or too stressful. Watch something that makes you laugh, something that makes you feel relaxed. Maybe you want to do a little bit of yoga. Maybe you want to do some meditation. Maybe, I know this all sounds very virtuous, but it is true. It is helpful. And if you have trouble winding down, these things are things that will help. And they're helping because they're getting our brain to slow down and to get off of itself. One of the biggest problems for sleep is when we cannot shut down our sympathetic nervous system. When it comes into play and when we can't quiet our mind, this keeps us awake. And it's interesting because I've heard this across the board from a lot of people that I've listened to, that we finally turn off the light and put our head on the pillow, and then all the thoughts of the day just rush in. And the reason this is happening is because we are not processing these thoughts during the day when we should be processing them, because we are overloading our day with things. Either busy work, we are too busy and we're overloading our day with all of these tasks that we have to do, or we are distracting ourselves because we don't want to think about these thoughts, because we don't want to have to deal with them, because it's heavy, because it's stuff that's going to be stressful for us. So then we put it off, but guess what? As soon as your head's on the pillow and you turn off that light, those thoughts come in and they're like, oh, there you are. Hey, I've been trying to get your attention all day. Great. Got a minute? Let's chat. That's going to happen. So how do we help ourselves with this? This is something that for me has been central to creating a better relationship with my sleep, has been managing my relationship with my stress, my nervous system, and with all the thoughts that I have and all the worries. So what can you do? You need to process things during the day, not let them load up and come to see you at night and wake you up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, you're awake, let's chat. No, you don't want that. So what do? We need solitude during the day. We need time to reflect. And this is hard because, like I said, we like to be efficient. We like to overschedule ourselves. And we feel like any downtime needs to be filled with something productive. And the thing that you need to fill your downtime with that would be productive would be reflection, would be time to listen to your thoughts, be with your thoughts, solitude. Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who has a podcast, he also has many books, but his podcast is Feel Better, Live More. And I really like him. I like him a lot. He has great guests. His episodes are pretty succinct and digestible, and he's all about helping people to live better in their bodies and how we can facilitate for that for ourselves, how we can advocate for ourselves in terms of balancing our lives. And he's just interested in everything that I'm interested in, I guess. But I've heard him say, and I thought this was brilliant, that he thinks solitude is one of the pillars of health, alongside diet and exercise and sleep. And when he says solitude, he doesn't mean loneliness. He means time with yourself, time where you are listening to yourself and reflecting, when you are by yourself with your thoughts. And I think absolutely this is true. And I have come to the same conclusion over the last year. So I was happy to hear him say it, where I think this is a missing component. People don't realize that this needs to be a pillar of our health. And I think in this pillar, you can put in mindfulness, you can put in meditation, you can put in journaling. There are all these tools that allow you going for a walk. by yourself without earbuds, without listening to something. Just go out in nature, listen to nature, and you will find that your thoughts start to flow and you are communing with yourself. You are communing with yourself, and the thoughts are not going to be that scary. The more you do this, the more accustomed to yourself you become. The more you allow your thoughts to come, and the more you allow your thoughts to come, you process them. You process them, and it's just like Julia Cameron says in The Artist's Way, the more you process things, then solutions just emerge. They will come to you. And of course, if you have a tendency to ruminate or you have a tendency to worry about the future, then there are ways to deal with this, to journal effectively, to meditate. You learn how to sit with your thoughts and how to be productive with it, and how to retrain yourself not to be stuck in rumination, not to be stuck into worry, but to figure out the solutions, to figure out what to do. But it works. And I think we need to give ourselves time during the day, not just before bed, to do this. And another thing that you can do before bed, if you have trouble doing this during the day, is journaling before bed. If you give yourself an outlet to write down all of your worries onto paper, then you've given them a chance to air, and they might not be so pressing when you try to fall asleep. So this is all why a wind down routine is really important. It's all about your parasympathetic nervous system and your little limp ragdoll coming along to help you to sleep. Now something else I want to tell you. I want to tell you about something that has huge magnitude of effect on our sleep, that is going to help us, again, with our sympathetic versus parasympathetic nervous system. And it's going to help us to wind down in the evening. It's going to help us to get into our little ragdoll state. And when I tell you this, you're going to be like, oh yeah, of course, we know this already. It's exercise. Exercise is a hugely beneficial sleep hygiene tool. And you probably already know it because you know that if you're outside of a day and you're very active that day, you will probably say to yourself, I'm going to sleep really well tonight. And you probably will. And the next day you're going to feel more refreshed. And this isn't a quinky dink. This is biology. This is what happens. When you exercise during the day, you are revving up your nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, in a really healthy way. And it helps to promote relaxation later. It also helps, depending on the type of exercise you do, it can also help you psychologically with your parasympathetic nervous system. Things like doing yoga as exercise have been shown to have a huge benefit. And Matthew Walker has an episode of his podcast recently where he compares different types of exercise and all these studies around these exercise modalities and their effect on sleep. And yoga had the biggest impact on sleep, which is really interesting. And they think that it's not only because you are moving and you are exercising, but because of what it does for our mental state and how it helps us to get into our parasympathetic nervous system. It strengthens our parasympathetic nervous system, our ability to calm ourselves and to regulate our emotions. And this has a direct impact on your ability to fall asleep at night. He also talked about Tai Chi, and that for the same type of reasons. You're moving really slowly, you're regulating your nervous system. So that type of exercise really helps with sleep as well. And then he looked at, aerobic exercise versus strength training exercise. And aerobic exercise, especially like HIIT type of stuff, is extremely beneficial because you are revving up your nervous system. You are using up your cortisol, which then has impact on your sympathetic nervous system versus your parasympathetic nervous system when you go to sleep. And also it stimulates deep sleep. So your body responds to the need. If you have exhausted yourself physically, and I don't mean overexhausted, but you've used your body, it knows that it needs to give you deep sleep because it's in deep sleep that you repair your body and you replenish yourself physically. So you will get more deep sleep, which is very restorative sleep. And then strength training, doing lifting weights and things like that, had a little less of a benefit, but still had a huge benefit. So it's still great to do. And yeah, so how much exercise should you be doing? And what time of day is beneficial? Well, the types of exercise we've gone over. How much exercise is a moderate amount of exercise per week. So a couple times a week, 3 times a week, that's going to be beneficial to you. They did a study in America, and Matthew Walker talks about this in another one of his episodes of his own podcast. And they took 400 participants, women who were all sedentary and overweight, and they split them into 4 parts. And the first group did exercise at 50% of what is the recommended amount by the National Institute of Health, I think it was. The next group exercised at 100% of what the recommendation was. The third group was going to overachieve, and they exercised at 150% of the recommended amount. And the fourth group did nothing. They just continued on as in their sedentary lifestyle as was. So what was the result? The result was the first 2 groups, so those exercising 50% and those exercising 100% of what was recommended, saw a 50% decrease in their sleep issues. So both of those groups saw a 50% decrease. The group that did 150% saw 65% reduction. So what's the point here? Oh, and the group that did nothing saw no change, as you would expect. But what is the lesson here? The lesson here is that even if you just do 50% of what's recommended, you get a big benefit for your sleep. So Matthew Walker highlights here what's really important is that you find the mode of the method, the medium of exercise that gives you pleasure, that you enjoy doing, that you will want to do several times a week, and be consistent with it. So don't pressure yourself to go crazy. You could just go for a walk 3 times a week, and you're going to get a huge benefit for your sleep. And here's where we can stack things as well. If you go for a walk, you're getting solitude time if you're not listening to earbuds. So you could get solitude time. You could be processing your thoughts as well, which is going to be beneficial for your sleep as well. You could also be outside walking, getting this solitude, getting sunlight in your eyes. So then you're stacking that daylight aspect of our sleep hygiene is also going to be beneficial for your sleep. This is what I've been doing, and I can see the difference on my Whoop. My Whoop, my health tracker that I wear, I can see a huge difference in my sleep. On the days when I get outside and I go for a walk, my sleep is much better. And I've been watching this for several months since last March, and it is consistent. When I exercise, my sleep is better, and I can just see it, and I know it, and I can feel it. And that's also what they found. They have these epidemiological studies. That means studies of lots of studies. So they look across all these studies that have been done, and they see what the correlation between them, or, like message across the board is. And they can see that sleep gives you quicker sleep onset, so you fall asleep quicker. It gives you better quality of sleep. You sleep deeper, and you are more efficient with your sleep, and you sleep longer. You get more quantity of sleep, and you wake up feeling more refreshed. This is all reported. And then they've also done studies that show that it's not just a correlation with exercise, meaning that they can see a connection, but it is causal. So if you take someone into a laboratory and you dose them with a bout of exercise, and then you look at all the metrics, you hook them up to all kinds of stuff, you can see what it does to their sleep. And it's affecting their deep sleep, it's affecting their REM sleep, and it's also affecting their light sleep as well. All of these are going to be better across the board. So exercise is one of the best things that you can do. And then what time of day should we be exercising? Matthew Walker says any time of day, but cut yourself off an hour before bed. And this is because when you exercise, you are affecting your core body temperature. And remember, this is one of our other sleep hygiene tips. You don't want to rise your core body temperature before sleep because you will have trouble falling asleep. You need your core body temperature to drop in order to go to sleep and to stay asleep. So just, think about that. Cut yourself off an hour before. If you talk to Andrew Huberman about it, he recommends that people exercise in the morning because this corresponds with our natural biological rhythms in terms of how much energy and motivation, and our sympathetic nervous system is naturally going to be more revved up in the morning. So we're working with our body's rhythms in the morning. And then in the afternoon, you want to start relaxing a little bit more and winding down, and you won't have as much motivation and focus and natural energy supporting exercise, but it doesn't mean you can't do it. If that's the only time that you can exercise, then do it. It's better to exercise at any time as long as you cut yourself off before an hour before bed. Okay? So that's it. So that's one of our greatest tools for sleep is exercise. And then also I want to talk about what happens in the night when you wake up and you still have racing thoughts. What do you do when you wake up and you just can't stop thinking and you can't fall asleep again? So this is, again, your sympathetic nervous system revving up and wanting to talk to you, wanting to fill your brain, wanting you to get up and get busy. This is my problem. I usually have no issue falling asleep, but I will routinely wake up in the early hours and not be able to fall back asleep, or take, 45 minutes to fall back asleep. And I've been working on it, and the things that have helped me, I'm going to tell you about. But sleep hygiene tools that Matthew Walker and Angie Huberman talk about for this sort of thing. If you wake up in the middle of the night, the thing you have to do is get off of the top of your brain. You need to get out of your thinking mind, and you need to become embodied. You need to get into your body. And this doesn't mean getting up and walking around and doing stretches. This means you've got to pull your attention away from your thoughts. And we do this by not counting sheep. He said, do not count sheep. There's been a study for that because scientists, what are they going to do on a weekend? They're going to do a study on counting sheep because they can. So they did that study, and it showed that did not work because it kept your brain thinking logically. And one of the first things that I started doing for my sleep was reading fiction before bed, light fiction, nothing too heavy, nothing too depressing, because it helps pull you away from your logical mind and brings you more into your creative thinking mind, which is more dreamlike, isn't it? It's more default mode network, which we haven't talked about, but that's where your mind wandering is in your default mode network. It pulls you more into that. And so that's the direction you want to go in the middle of the night. You don't want to use your logical brain because then you're going to be pulling yourself right into your brain space that wants to think and talk about things and fix things. So don't count sheep, but what can you do instead? You can do a meditation, and there's lots of apps, but of course I've told you not to have your phone in your room. So good luck with that. You could have a dummy phone that has meditation apps on it, or you just know how to meditate yourself. You could learn some sleep meditations. So just listening to your breathing can help. That's what I do. I just feel the breath in my belly, and I feel my belly rise, and I feel my belly fall, and I just feel them and pay attention to them. You can do the same with a body scan. Basically, you just bring your attention to different parts of the body. And again, this is taking you out of your thinking mind and bringing you into your body, and distracting you from your thoughts. You can also go for a mental walk. And the same study that studied counting sheep did this thing, and they recommended it. You basically think about a walk that you know extremely well, a walk that you know all the details of and you can replicate in your head. And then you start with the very beginning of your walk. You could be putting on your shoes in your in your house, tying the laces, and you notice the feeling of the laces, you notice what the laces look like, you notice your shoes and what they look like. Maybe there's a smell you can remember in this particular part of the house. Our boot room is a little bit musty. You reach for the handle and you can see that the handle looks like, and you recall what it feels like. It's knobbly, maybe. Mine is. And you turn the door and you open it and it squeaks. So you see what I mean? You are going very minutia. You were thinking about all the little details. And as you do this, your brain starts to get off of itself, and you go into the type of brain activity, the default mode network, the place that you need to be to fall asleep. You're pulling your brain into that space, and then you can fall asleep. Other things that you can do, there's something called the Reverie app, is something that Andrew Huberman recommends, and I think he's used it a lot, and it's hypnotherapy for sleep, so that can help. Like I said, meditation apps. You can listen to a sleep story, listen to a soporific podcast, things that are going to distract you from your thoughts, but not stimulate new logical thinking, if you know what I mean. Okay, so no listening to the news, no looking at your emails, that sort of stuff, big no-no, that's going to really hurt you. And now something else that you can do during the day also to help with this time of night, and this is something that I've been doing that has really, really helped me. It's called Yoga Nidra, which is yogic sleep, or non-sleep deep rest is another way of thinking about this. Or if you want to look it up, you can look up non-sleep deep rest. Basically, they're the same thing, but non-sleep deep rest is what we tell people who are allergic to yoga, who look at it like airy-fairy woo-woo type of thinking and aren't as open to these types of practices. But it is basically the same thing. And why is it the same thing? Because there's been tons of studies of Yoga Nidra that show that it works extremely well at regulating our nervous system and helping us to learn how to enter the parasympathetic nervous system. It trains us to become stronger in that regard, to allow ourselves to relax. And it gives us control, a little bit more control over our nervous system. It also allows parts of the brain to, well, this is what Matthew Walker thinks, and he wants to do some studies, because they've shown that just 20 minutes or half an hour of Yoga Nidra can give you the same benefits as 2 hours of sleep. And why is that happening? It's because you're allowing your brain to go offline, especially certain parts of your brain are allowed to go to sleep, even though you're awake while you're doing it. So it's a really interesting thing, but there's a lot of scientific interest into Yoga Nidra. And so Andrew Huberman is calling it non-sleep deep rest to help people who are more scientifically minded be open to the practice and try it out. But I started doing it when I had my first surgery because, like I told you, I had insomnia and I couldn't sleep. And I was talking to my friend Shirley, who runs a sound bath, and she actually teaches Yoga Nidra. And I was not aware of it at all before she told me about it. And she pointed me in the direction of this Yoga Nidra website, which is like the School of Yoga Nidra, and they have some free Yoga Nidra recordings. You can also go onto YouTube and find a million of them. I like this lady, this Canadian lady named Ally Boothroyd. I'm not sure if I'm Boothroyd. I might be pronouncing her name wrong. She just says, "Hi, my name is Ally." And she is lovely. I really like her voice. She definitely straddles the East and the West. She talks about the science behind it all, but she also frames everything in terms of yoga and uses Sanskrit terms and talks about our intentions as our sankalpa, which is your intention, setting an intention for your practice. And that might also seem hippy-dippy and woo-woo, but I think it's really powerful and it works. And I've learned about that through the meditation app, through Healthy Minds, about setting an intention every single time you start to meditate. And it really does focus the mind and give you perspective around why you're doing what you're doing, which makes it more effective in the long run. So don't poo-poo it until you've tried it. But I'll put a link to her. I'll put a link to also this other guy who I think is fantastic. And I've only been able to find one recording of his. One of my friends who's a yogi, we were talking about Yoga Nidra, and she was like, oh, you've got to listen to this guy. He's hilarious and amazing. And I think he's Dutch, but it was so cosmically cuckoo pants. I just love it. And it did the trick for me. So I'm going to put a link in there for you to try it out. And yeah, it's like you're on drugs listening to him. And if anyone can point in the direction of any other recordings by him, I would love to listen to more. So that's Yoga Nidra, or non-sleep deep rest. And what is it doing for us? It's training us to be able to have control over our nervous system and to allow ourselves to relax. And it's interesting because Andrew Huberman first became aware of Yoga Nidra when he went to a clinic for addiction that was being run by someone he really respects. And this person was having everyone in the clinic start out their day. The first thing they do when they wake up is do an hour of Yoga Nidra. And Andrew Huberman was like, what is this thing? And why are they doing it? And it was explained that it's because when these addicts come to the clinic, they are so chronically sleep deprived and they don't know how to sleep. They don't know how to relax. They need to learn. So every single morning they start out and with an hour of Yoga Nidra to make up for their inability to sleep through the night. And it helps them to train and learn how to sleep, but also to get kind of the sleep that they need. Like I said, a half an hour, they've been able to see that can kind of equate to 2 hours of sleep. If you just do a half an hour of Yoga Nidra, you can get the benefits of 2 hours of sleep. So by starting out your day with an hour of Yoga Nidra, if you've had a bad night of sleep, that could be a really good thing. For me, I've been doing it after lunch, like at the time of day when you feel like you want a nap. That's when I've been doing Yoga Nidra just for 20 minutes. Because I find that if I have time, I'll do a half an hour, but 20 minutes is all I need. And I find it hugely beneficial. And I treat it like I would a nap. Speaking of naps, should we talk about naps? Who should be taking a nap? Naps are really powerful. Naps are really powerful. But why do I not take a nap? Why don't I just take a nap instead of doing Yoga Nidra? It's because I have insomnia type of issues and I have trouble with my sleep, and my sleep is very delicate. And anyone who has trouble sleeping at night should not give themselves extra sleep during the day, because remember sleep pressure? Remember we talked about adenosine, which is this chemical that builds up in your brain, which gives you that feeling of sleepiness, the sleep pressure. Whenever you nap, it washes away the adenosine, a good portion of it. So that's why you wake up feeling refreshed often from a nap, and then you don't get tired until later in the day, because you've actually washed away. Your brain has been able to clear out this chemical buildup in your brain that's telling you it's tired and is pushing you towards sleep. So we don't want to do that for people who have insomnia issues, because then you don't have sleep pressure helping you to sleep in the night. All right? But who does want to nap? If you don't have any issues with your sleep at night, try some napping during the day, because it has huge benefits for learning and performance, for focus, for motivation. It basically gives you tons of benefits of what sleep gives you. And they've done studies. Matthew Walker talks about a bunch of studies. I won't get into them, but you can see a 20% benefit to your ability to take in information, to learn, and to hold on to that information. And also the same goes for motor skills. You can see a 20% improvement in your ability to do something, because your sleep has been able to onboard the information and kind of process it while you took this nap. Also, there's a lot of famous people, especially scientists and creatives as well, who use naps to help them come up with solutions for things, who help them to make creative connections. So play around with naps because they can be very powerful. And now, while we're here, let's just talk about a couple naps because there's a menu of naps you can choose from, and also some things on the other end of a nap. When you wake up from a nap, how do you keep yourself from feeling groggy? I've got some tricks for you. So if you like a nap and you're trying out some naps, first thing to know is there's something called the NASA nap, which I'm just going to tell you about because it's fun. Basically, NASA put into place mandatory napping for its astronauts, but it took off on the ground as well, in that everyone who was kind of in the culture of NASA, who was working for NASA on the ground, not just the astronauts, started to take these naps, and they were called the NASA nap. And they implemented this for the astronauts because the biggest threat to astronauts is not a meteor, even though you might have seen some of those movies, but it's human error. And how do we protect ourselves from human error? It's by getting sleep. So that's why they gave them these naps. And then everyone on the ground started taking naps, and it was really beneficial for everybody within the institution. They were getting these naps. They were working better. They were more efficient. They were more productive, happier. So that became known as the NASA nap. And then also we have our power nap. So what is the power nap? The power nap came out of the aviation industry, who also were trying to prevent catastrophic crashes when pilots are at the very end of a long-haul flight. That's the most dangerous time, when they're trying to land the plane after they've been awake for a really long time, when they've done a red eye. That's the most dangerous thing in aviation. So the aviation industry brought all these scientists in to tell them what should they do. And the scientists said, you need to enforce a prophylactic nap. And they did some sciencey stuff, and they figured out that the perfect time to have this nap is actually at the very beginning of a flight, not in the middle, not at the end, because it kind of brought the start time, it restarted the clock in a way. So it gave them the extra bit of time, and it was just the most beneficial, which is really interesting, which also makes me think that if you had a bad night's sleep, doing an hour of yoga nidra in the morning when you wake up is probably a good thing as well. But anyway, so the power nap, so this prophylactic nap, they came and the scientists presented to the aviation board, and they said, we need to make all your pilots take a prophylactic nap. And everyone started to snicker, all the aviation bros, because it's quite an alpha dog culture. And they were like, our pilots are also alpha males, and they're not going to take a prophylactic nap. That's going to seem sissy. So then the aviation guys suggested, what if we rebrand it and we call it the power nap? So that's how the power nap was born, trying to convince alpha males that it was a good thing to do and to change the culture around sleep, right? Our attitudes towards sleep. Power nap is strong. Prophylactic nap, that does sound a bit sissy. But anyway, so that's how the power nap came into play. Now, how about the nappuccino? Have you heard of the nappuccino? The nappuccino is when, and I did this once, I went to a wedding in St. Louis. My friend Emma was getting married. And it was one of my first weddings I went to when we were young. We were we weren't just out of college. It was probably like 5 years later, but she was one of my first friends to get married. So I was quite excited. And I had worked all the night before and then taken the plane in the morning to St. Louis, and I was so exhausted. Basically, I hadn't gotten any sleep. And someone suggested that I take a shot of espresso, set my alarm clock, and try to fall asleep immediately for 20 minutes and then wake up, and I will feel amazing afterwards. That's a nappuccino. Basically, you're taking this shot of caffeine, and the caffeine is hot, so it helps to warm you up so you can cool down so you can sleep. This is going back to body temperature and how we can coerce ourselves if you need to remember the finer points of that. Warming up to cool down to fall asleep, it works. Just listen to that episode, the last episode, to find out why, if you don't remember. And then the caffeine takes 20 minutes to kick in. So you get 20 minutes of sleep, which gives you all these benefits of sleep in 20 minutes. And then the caffeine kicks in, which swipes out even more adenosine, sleep pressure. And then you've got tons of energy and time is on your side, and you can go party at the wedding, which I did. So that's basically what a nappuccino is. Now, what about the super nap? The super nap is when you stack a whole bunch of things to help you to feel even more alert and awake. So you take so scientists wanted to see how they could make a super nap. And basically you could take the nappuccino. So you take some caffeine, a shot of caffeine before your nap. You do 20-minute nap because that is best. If you go beyond 40 minutes, you're going to, yes, get the benefits of more stages of sleep, but you are going to enter into deep sleep, which is going to make it harder for you to wake up, and you're going to have sleep inertia when you wake up, meaning you're going to feel groggy after you wake up from your nap, and that can last for like 90 minutes. So it might not be ideal. So the super nap is 20 minutes long because you don't want to go into your deep sleep. So you have your shot of espresso, you have 20 minutes, and then it's what you do on the other side that makes it even more super. If you wake up and you splash cold water on your face, you are again affecting your body temperature, which is a huge lever for wakefulness and sleep. And if you splash cold water on your face, dunk your face into a ice bath, that kind of thing, your cortisol levels spike, and that makes you more alert. That wakes you up even more. Then we can go one further with this. And if you go outside and you catch sunlight and sunlight comes into your eyes, it wakes you up even more because we are pulling the lever of light, of daylight, of sunlight. And that's going to give you a super nap. And if you don't have daylight, splashing cold water on your face, just remember this is going to really help. And if you can't splash cold water on your face, get outside and look at the sun, and it's going to really help. And long story short, just think all of these things are helpful, but make sure that if you're taking this shot of caffeine, you know how it's going to affect your ability to fall asleep that night. So maybe don't do it if you're really sensitive to caffeine. And also the timing of naps. We have to talk about that. Sorry. There's so much little, bits of stuff to remember. But the nap, just like taking caffeine, is going to wash away your sleep pressure and will affect your ability to sleep at night. So when should you nap? Nap before 3 p.m. Don't nap after 3 p.m. because then you're endangering your ability to sleep in the evening. And if you push your sleep too much, you're going to jet lag yourself. You're going to mess up your regularity, which is our number one sleep edict. You don't want to mess up your regularity. This is sacrosanct, your regularity. So if you can nap during the early afternoon hours and it doesn't change the time when you want to go to sleep, then do it. Get the benefit of napping. I wish I could. If you are like me and you have insomnia type tendencies, don't do napping, but do yoga nidra instead, because it's going to train your parasympathetic nervous system, which is going to help you fall asleep and stay asleep through the early morning hours. Okay, guys. Woof. Oh my gosh, how much have I covered? Oh, okay. Quickly, let's go into some other little, three other little very short pieces of sleep hygiene that I want to tell you. So the first thing I want to talk about is clock faces and their relationship to phones as well, because oftentimes the clock face that we have in our room is our phone, right? And I've already talked several times in the past about how phones are not good to have in your bedroom. And you've probably heard this suggested by people on high, saying that they don't bring phones into their bedroom and phones are not allowed upstairs, etc., etc. The key reason behind this is because there's something called anticipatory dopamine, and it's really intrinsic with things that are addictive, especially. And things that are addictive usually release a lot of quick dopamine. And that's why our body seeks them out, because we get this quick hit of dopamine, which is a pleasure hormone. Dopamine is also your motivation hormone. So it gets released to motivate you to do something. And quick dopamine, you can feel it whenever you maybe have alcohol, smoke a cigarette. When you start scrolling on your phone, you just feel this need to do it, and you get this sense of pleasure from it. It's something that biologically we wouldn't have been able to find easily when we were hunter and gatherers, but we've hacked the system and we've made these things that have made dopamine really easy to get. And it's addictive because we seek dopamine. We love dopamine. So the phone is a big dopamine hit giver. And if you have it in your bedroom at night, if you wake up in the night, you are probably releasing anticipatory dopamine because your body's like, oh, I could get some dopamine. I could get some really quick dopamine. Just reach for the phone, just unlock it, just scroll, just look, just see what's happening. And then all of a sudden you are diving into your phone and it's waking you up and you're looking at an LED screen. Yes, we've talked about LED screens and what they do. So anticipatory dopamine is what's happening in the night when you wake up and you want to reach for your phone. But also it's happening throughout the night while you're asleep. Your brain is conscious of the fact that the phone is there. So it's niggling you, even in your unconscious state, to wake up and check your phone. So don't have it in your room. Take it out of your room. It's similar to like if you have an issue with crisps, speaking from personal experience here, don't have crisps in your house. Help yourself out, because the anticipatory dopamine pushing me to have crisps at a certain time of evening, 5 o'clock when I'm starting to feed the kids, is going to be hard to resist. But if I remove the crisps from the house, it's a lot easier to resist. Okay, and the other thing that's happening with the phone in your room is that you are checking the time. If you go and reach for your phone, you're going to be looking at the clock face on your phone and you're going to realize what time it is. And then this creates something called anticipatory anxiety. So you look at the phone and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're like, oh God, I really need to fall back asleep. If I don't fall back asleep, then I'm not going to get enough sleep and I'm going to feel horrible tomorrow and I've got so much to do. And you create this anxiety that you're not going to be able to sleep, right? And then when you do fall back asleep, you have anticipatory anxiety working on you because you were anticipating that you were going to wake up and look at the clock again, and it's still not going to be time to wake up, and you might not be able to fall back asleep, and you're going to have insomnia, or you're just going to have a bad night's sleep. Does this make sense? So just having a clock face in your room creates this thing. And this is also why we wake up at the same time every night often. It's not coincidental that you wake up every single night at 2 o'clock in the morning. How do you know it's 2 o'clock in the morning? Because you're checking your clock face. And so you're training your body to wake up at 2 o'clock every morning. And guess what? Your body is keeping time. Your circadian rhythm is fine-tuned to about 24 hours and 15 minutes is your circadian rhythm. So we keep it in check, that extra 15 minutes every single day, by seeing sunlight and your suprachiasmatic nucleus telling your brain what time of the day it is. And that helps to regulate your circadian rhythm. Your melatonin release when it's dark helps to regulate the extra 15 minutes to rein it in. We also keep time by keeping a schedule around behavior and events. So eating meals at the same time every single day, give or take, a little bit, that helps regulate your circadian rhythm and helps your brain know what time of the day it is. We are social usually at kind of similar times every single day. That kind of stuff can help regulate your system. And also we check clocks and we regulate our schedules because of this as well, which is all helping to keep our circadian rhythm to 24 hours instead of 24 hours and 15 minutes and drifting every single day. But the main thing to know here is that your brain is keeping time and it does know what time of the day it is, and it can fairly accurately just know. it's a bit crazy. But it's why when you set an alarm clock for a really early time, like 4 o'clock in the morning, which is not normal to your schedule, but you've got to catch a taxi to get to an airport. It's really important that you wake up. You will have anticipatory anxiety around waking up at 4 o'clock and your alarm going off, and your brain will often wake you up just before your alarm clock goes off, like 5 minutes, 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute before. And it's because your brain actually knows what time it is. It's crazy. So that's anticipatory anxiety and anticipatory dopamine, which happens when you have a clock face and or a phone in your room. So take them out. And then you say, well, what do I do? How do I wake up if I don't have an alarm clock of some kind? Well, so here's what I do. I've got a Whoop, which is and I'm not telling you to get a Whoop, but part of my Whoop, which is my health monitoring device, is it has a wristband around my wrist. It doesn't have a clock face on it, but you can set an alarm through the app and it will start to buzz at a certain time to wake you up. So I keep my phone downstairs at night, and at 6:30 in the morning, I have it set to buzz, and that wakes me up. You're not supposed to hear it, but I can hear it. But it's a gentler way to wake up instead of having a loud noise, which can psych out your nervous system and isn't terribly good for your cardiovascular health. So that's a nice thing. And then what do you do if you don't have a Whoop? You can buy these devices, these wristbands, pretty inexpensively. I bought one for my husband for Christmas for £20, $19.99 from Boots, which is the pharmacy here. And it's attractive, it's slim, it's light, and he can attach it to his phone via an app, and he can have his phone somewhere else, and he can wear this wristband, and the alarm will wake him up. Does he use it? No. You can bring a horse to water. I'm hoping that he comes to the decision to use it on his own. I'm not going to nag him, but he has trouble with his sleep, so he probably should be using it. All right, so that's phones and clock faces. Now, the next little bit of sleep hygiene are 2 tools that can really help you in your sleep hygiene kit. And they help you by allowing your brain to stay disconnected from the outside world, from sensory information. Do you remember how your thalamus closes and it basically seals off your brain from the outside world, from all the information that your senses are feeding into your brain, so your brain can go into the sleep state? Well, we're going to help protect this state by wearing an eye mask or putting in some earplugs. And these 2 things have been scientifically studied and shown that they do help to protect your sleep. And the reason is because even if you don't think it's waking you up, if there's light in your room and it's shining through your eyelids, it is still communicating with your suprachiasmatic nucleus. There's this little trick that you can do, and Matthew Walker brought it up around teenagers, how you can train teenagers to want to go to sleep a little bit earlier, is to have a light that starts to turn on and brighten in their room for the hour before they wake up in the morning. Just that bit of light coming through their closed eyelids will start to affect their circadian rhythm, and it will make them want to go to sleep an hour earlier in the evening. Interesting. So the same type of thing can happen to you. If you're sleeping and you are not in complete darkness, it can disrupt your sleep, and it can make your sleep shallower, and it can wake you up. So put on an eye mask, but make sure your eye mask is breathable. It is not going to make your face hot, because remember about what happens with temperature. If your glabrous skin cells, do you remember glabrous skin cells? This is these kind of sensitive skin cells we have on our hands and our feet and the top of our forehead where we do not have hair. These are key regulation areas for body temperature. And if the eye mask is covering up the glabrous skin cells on your forehead and making them hot, it'll wake you up. So I use an eye mask, and I use a silk eye mask. It wasn't very expensive. I got it off of Amazon. And it's nice and silky on my skin, and it supposedly doesn't give you wrinkles, and it regulates temperature really well, so I never get hot wearing it. So that's your eye mask. The same can be said for earplugs. They've done studies and they've shown that even just a little bit of sound is disruptive to sleep. And you might not recognize it. You might still sleep and you might not wake up, but it could still disrupt your sleep. It could fracture your sleep. So if we can protect ourselves from these sounds, it's just going to help our sleep to be that much deeper and maybe more efficient. So try some earplugs if you can stand them. Some people can't because it means they can hear their heart beating, and that's weird and freaks them out. And I now have these kind of supersonic earplugs that my husband got me for Christmas because he snores and we're trying to figure out what to do about that. And they hurt my ears. So I only use them when I absolutely have to. But the problem I have right now is that there's a family of shrews. If you're not aware of what a shrew is, it's like a tiny little mouse. And they have come in and they have made a nest under the floorboards next to my side of the bed. And they seem to be particularly active in the early morning hours. So they have been waking me up. So I've been wearing my supersonic earplugs, which have helped a bit, but I can hear them chewing and gnawing and scurrying about. Anyway, they're really hard to catch, these shrews. They don't like mouse traps at all. They don't like peanut butter. So anyway, we'll see what happens with them. Hopefully they're not going to chew through the wires and burn down our house. Whew, anxiety, anticipatory anxiety coming in. So that's earplugs. Now, I also want to touch upon mouth tape, another thing that you can do to your face. And why do I want to talk about mouth tape? You might have heard about mouth taping because it's becoming a lot more en vogue, a lot more fashionable these days to tape your mouth. Mouth tape is so that you stop breathing through your mouth when you sleep. And I'm not going to go into it deeply, but it is a good thing. You do not want to breathe through your mouth in general. You don't want to be a mouth breather. There's a reason it's a derogatory term. And historically, we used to teach our children not to breathe through their mouths. And indigenous cultures all around the world would teach their children not to breathe through their mouths, but somehow it fell to the wayside and we haven't been paying attention to it. There's a brilliant book by James Nestor called Breath. The Lost Art of Breathing, I think, is the subtitle. And it is brilliant, and it will teach you everything you need to know about what mouth breathing does to your sinuses and to your mouth and your jaw, and how it's affecting your sleep and how it's affecting your cardiovascular health. It causes sleep apnea. It causes all kinds of stuff. It's not good. So mouth taping, my husband, because he's snoring, we've been trying everything under the sun to stop him snoring. And when I first told him I'd like him to mouth tape, he was appalled because he had heard some kind of story about people dying because they're mouth taping, which I don't know that that's true at all. Because if they did die, hopefully they didn't. Hopefully this is an apocryphal scaremongering story. It's because they did it the wrong way. All you have to do is take a little tiny bit of surgical tape and put it vertically over the front of your mouth to encourage you to keep your lips together, which means you can still breathe through the side of your mouth if you need to. You can still drink through a straw through the side of your mouth if you need to, but it will encourage you to keep your mouth closed, and it will train you to breathe through your nose, and it will expand your nasal cavities and your sinuses, and your face is very plastic. It is very moldable, and you can change it. And we change it through behavior and through form follows function. So if you're breathing through your nose, it'll change things. So anyway, that's mouth taping. But if you are snoring, look into this. It's really important that we look into snoring and we try to stop snoring and we try to fix it. And sleep apnea is a real problem and really bad for our health. So if you have sleep apnea, which means you stop breathing in the night and you probably are snoring along with this, it's a serious health issue and you should look into it. And it's definitely affecting your sleep. So that's mouth taping. Now, I also want to talk about the menopause and perimenopause. these are subjects close to my heart because I've realized that I believe I've been in perimenopause now for at least 5 years and I had no idea. But it can account for a lot, a lot of my stress and my midlife crisis and my feeling crazy and various health issues that I've had. Now I realize are perimenopausal symptoms, and I had no idea because nobody tells you. And I have talked to the doctors about these things, multiple doctors, and nobody, not one of them, has brought up perimenopause or menopause. I had to research it and then go to the doctor and be like, could this be that? And they're like, well, we just assume you're in perimenopause. I'm like, but you tell them what? And things change and our bodies change, and nutritionally we need different nutrition, and it's a roller coaster. It's affecting our emotions, and it affects our sleep. It affects our sleep. So what is happening and how is it affecting our sleep? The first thing which you might notice is that you might be getting hot flashes. You might be getting night sweats. And for all you guys that are listening to this podcast, it is good for you to know about this so you can sympathize with your female friends and your partners and understand that this is really hard and it is really distressing because of what it does to our sleep, especially. Remember that if you are sleep deprived, you are 60% more emotionally reactive. Now, anyone who's going through what I have been going through will recognize that, yes, okay, me feeling crazy and like I'm full of rage and losing my shit all the time. Excuse me, earmuffs on, and my shish kebabs, losing my shish kebabs, and being irrational. And let's not do the thing of like, oh, she's just having her period. There's a reason we get more emotional when we're having our period, and a reason we get more emotional when we're going through perimenopause and menopause. It is a hormonal roller coaster, and if we're not getting sleep, it's exacerbating everything. And we're not getting sleep often because of heat regulation. So at night, if you are getting hot flashes or night sweats, you are getting woken up because you are too hot. And remember, a key lever for sleep is core body temperature. So if we cannot keep our body temperature cool, it will wake us up. What do we do about that? Let me just say one other thing that has been my experience too, is I started experiencing heart palpitations really badly around the time of having my last child, which was 7 years ago, almost 7 years ago now, when I was pregnant. And I kept feeling like I was having a heart attack, and I kept getting checked and having EKGs and whatever all the things are they do to test your heart. And they're like, you haven't had a heart attack. But no one would investigate it further. No one would listen to me or take me seriously. I was having heart palpitations all the time. And of course, you're pregnant, you've got hormones. And one doctor just said, it's just the burden of pregnancy. And that's where he left it. But it kept happening after I had the baby. I kept having heart palpitations and panic attacks. And last year, I really thought I had a heart attack. And recently, I was woken up in the middle of the night feeling like I was having a heart attack. These heart palpitations and the feeling of like having a racing heart, it's really annoying and difficult, and I can feel it affecting me and my nervous system, and especially at night, it disrupts my sleep. And guess what? I talked to the doctors about it. No one would investigate it further. No one would tell me what it was. But I asked the internet, and the internet told me, I said, are heart palpitations a perimenopausal symptom? And the internet came right back. Yes, 50% of women going through perimenopause have heart palpitations. 50%. And yet nobody seemed to recognize that this was a thing, or to just give me that little bit of insight into it, that I'm not in danger, that this is normal. And it's because your estrogen levels are dropping, and that has an effect on your heart and your nervous system, which makes your heart flutter and race and palpitate. So great. So how do we fix this? The internet told me that the way to treat it is through HRT. hormonal replacement therapy is also what's recommended to help control hot flashes and night sweats as well. The problem is that I can't take HRT because I've had breast cancer. And the problem for a lot of women is that they're scared of HRT because of what they've heard of it causing breast cancer. So for all those people who are scared of HRT, I want you to take a step back, and I would like you to listen to an episode of the Attia podcast. He's a doctor, and he interviews this woman who is an extremely, extremely respected scientist who was one of the people who was running the trial of HRT back in the 80s and 90s. Or was it the 90s? I think it was the 90s. And it's the trial that was stopped early because they thought they saw a correlation between breast cancer and HRT. But that has been debunked. But the media took that story and ran with it and did some major fear-mongering around it, which has created several generations of women who did not take HRT and were scared of HRT. There's lots of different types of HRT, lots of different protocols, lots of different formulas, and it'll depend on the person. And you don't have to be scared of breast cancer so much. From what I was told, or what I learned, was that there is some HRT that actually seems to reduce your risk of breast cancer. And there's certain HRT that has a slight increase risk of breast cancer. But a lot of it also has to do with when you take it, how old you are, and at what stage in perimenopause or menopause you are. So don't take my word for it, because I haven't studied it enough to talk about it, but I'd like to, and I'd like to get somebody on here to talk to us about it and perimenopause in general. We need a whole other podcast for this, but I will put that episode of the Attia podcast into the show notes, and I encourage you to go listen to it. And if your sleep is being disrupted from perimenopausal symptoms, then please do consider HRT, but also we need to look at diet, nutrition. We need to exercise. We need to balance out our hormones, and that will have a big effect. And I could talk about this further, but we will save that for another day, okay? All right, so that's the menopause and perimenopause and sleep. Okay, then let's see, what else? What have I not covered? I should say finally too, that if you do still have insomnia after all of the sleep hygiene stuff and trying all this stuff for a good amount of time, a lot of it is behavior based. The behavioral tools have the most magnitude of change, of benefit for you. You need to look at your behavior first before anything else. Then you look at your nutrition, and they didn't talk too much, Andrew Huberman and Matthew Walker, about nutrition, but basically you should avoid sugar, avoid, processed, ultra-processed food. You should have a good diet. A good diet is going to help your sleep, and sleep is going to help with your diet, as we talked about as well in our other episode, and how it affects your metabolism and affects your sugar cravings and cravings for certain types of food. But if you eat a diet high in sugar and ultra processed food, it has a big impact on your ability to sleep. So that's nutrition. Then you can look at supplementation. Very quickly, let's just look at a couple supplementation things that I learned that I thought was interesting. I'm going to direct you to one of the Andrew Huberman podcasts about supplementation. And there is an episode with a conversation between Matthew Walker and Andrew Huberman about supplementation. So I think best for you to listen to those if you want to know further about supplementation. Just know from my experience and from what they say as well, this is not going to have as great an effect on your sleep as the behavior stuff and the nutrition stuff. Those are the things you need to look at first. But what kind of supplements have been shown to help? The first thing that I want to talk about is magnesium, because that was something that I heard down the grapevine from every which way, oh, you should try magnesium to help your sleep. Well, scientifically, they did some studies and they saw that magnesium does not affect your sleep if you are getting enough magnesium in your diet. But for those people who are magnesium deficient, it helps your sleep a lot. And they saw this especially with older women. 80% of women, older women, seem to be deficient in magnesium. So take magnesium if you're having trouble with your sleep and see if it does anything. And if it does help you, chances are you're magnesium deficient. And Andrew Huberman is really into magnesium threonate, which you can find in this country, in the UK, as Magtine, I think is the name of it. It wasn't available for a really long time, and now it's here. And I think it's because of Andrew Huberman and his popularity. But magnesium citrate is one that you can find. There's some that are easier on the stomach and some that are harder. So investigate. If you ask the internet, it will tell you. But I take magnesium threonate before sleep. And I think it helps me, but I have a feeling I'm magnesium deficient. Valerian root does not have any effect on your sleep. They've looked into it because it's one of those things, one of those herbs that everyone says to take for sleep and for your nervous system, but it doesn't seem to have any effect on sleep as far as the science has been able to show. But it might be placebo effect, so it might be helping you. Maybe it has a small effect on your ability to relax before sleep. So, if it's helping you, go for it. But just know scientifically they have no evidence of it helping. One thing that does help is something called apigenin, which is in chamomile. So yes, there's a reason why drinking chamomile tea helps you to get to sleep. It's apigenin, and it does help with sleep. So you could try some of that. What else? Oh, melatonin. We should talk about melatonin supplementation. Stay away from it. Stay away from the stuff that you buy in the shops is basically the long and short of it. Those bottles, often there's a huge discrepancy between what it says on the tin, how much melatonin is in it, and how much is actually in a pill. Oftentimes there's much more than is recommended, and that can really mess you up, and it can mess up your system. Your system is a delicate balance, a ballet of hormones, and having too much melatonin, especially artificial melatonin, can interfere with that ballet. And this is why it's especially not good to give it to children, unless I know that some kids with like autism and things like that can be melatonin deficient and might need more. Also, older adults and women going through menopause often can have trouble with melatonin release. And older adults can have their pineal gland, which is the gland that secretes melatonin, it becomes calcified, so they cannot secrete melatonin. And that's when you need medical grade prescribed melatonin. But you need to talk to your doctor about this. So stay away from the stuff in the shops. And if you think you might need melatonin, consult your doctor and have it prescribed medically. Andrew Huberman has an interesting little story. He was working in a lab and they were giving hamsters huge amounts of melatonin, and it made their testes shrink hugely in size. So he's stayed away from melatonin for that reason. So, you men, just think about that. But women as well, we've got testes on the inside, our ovaries. And then something else they talked about that I thought was interesting was tart cherries, which you might have heard of as a sleep supplement. There were some studies, just a few small studies, but they seem to have very promising results as far as helping with sleep quality. And so I tested it out myself, and I got some tart cherry juice, and I took it for 2 weeks, which you had to take like 4 to 8 ounces of the stuff before bed, an hour before bed, which I didn't enjoy very much. And it didn't seem to have any effect on my sleep quality. But when I stopped taking it, I had insomnia for 3 nights. And I think this is because apparently it has a natural form of melatonin and a natural form of what's it called that you get from turkey? Tryptophan. And these things can, again, screw with your body's natural ability to create these things endogenously. Yeah. So you might screw with your endogenous ability to make these things, which can screw up your sleep. So I'm not going anywhere near the stuff because I didn't see a benefit. I only saw insomnia come when I tried to get rid of it. Another thing was eating kiwis. Apparently, there's some small studies to show that eating kiwis, but you have to eat the skin of the kiwi as well, helps with sleep. I'm going to leave you with these supplement ideas. Just remember, they're not as powerful as behavior and nutrition. And then after that, if you're still having trouble, prescription could be a way. Matthew Walker does not talk favorably about sleeping pills. I would avoid sleeping pills. And if you want to know more about sleeping pills, listen to Matthew Walker talk about them. It's not good. But there's a whole new slew of sleeping medication that's coming out, the doxys and something else, these D drugs that are better, but look into anything that you're being prescribed and maybe look into Matthew Walker and what he has to say about them before you take them. Oh, and also know that if all of these things are still not helping with your sleep, you may really have a sleep disorder, and you should look into getting help from a specialist. And you'll probably be pointed to someone who will teach you something called CBTI, which is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And if you look it up on the internet, there's also apps. There's lots of stuff out there around CBTI, so you might be able to get a leg up and help yourself. But that's something that can really help and is scientifically proven to help with insomnia. So that's another thing to look into. All right, finally, I want to talk about dreams because we haven't gotten to it, and I just think it's such a fascinating subject, and it's something that we can foster our ability to harness the power of our dreams and to appreciate our dreams and learn from our dreams in so many ways. And I would be remiss if I left this out. Should we be interpreting our dreams? Our dreams are there to help us to process our emotions and to process the events in our lives. And if we do not have REM sleep, if we do not have dream sleep, it has a huge impact on our mental health. So should you be interpreting your dreams? Should somebody else be interpreting your dreams? Probably not. Should you be interpreting your dreams? Yes, you can be. Guess what? They did a study into dreams, and they found that the kind of alignment of our dreams and our waking life is about 2%. Your dreams are very symbolic. They are not direct interpretations of your waking life. And every single person's dream, their symbolism and their abstraction is going to be particular to themselves. It's like Matthew Walker described it like, or Andrew Huberman did, I can't remember which one. They talked about it like, you know, a particular artist has a particular style and a particular way of, especially with the abstract expressionists and things like that, they'll have their own style of abstraction in representing the world. And that's how your dreams are. They're particular to your style. So you can kind of get an idea yourself, but another person's going to have a hard time interpreting your dreams. But the things to look out for, and if you keep a dream journal, the things to look out for are repeating themes with emotional significance, and also people of significance. And I think Andrew Huberman keeps a dream journal, and there's a lot of people who do, and it can be really helpful in processing your emotions. There was another study that took people who were dealing with traumatic experiences. They were getting therapy, and they had all these people keep dream journals. And they wanted to see if keeping a dream journal was going to help them to get remission from their issues, from their depression or their anxiety or whatever. And what they found was that it wasn't the dream journaling that gave them remission. The people who, in their dream journals, seemed to be dreaming most about the things that they were trying to deal with, about their trauma, those were the people that eventually found clinical remission from their depression. The other people who weren't dreaming about the things that they were trying to work through didn't achieve remission. So we need to be dreaming about the things that we need to work through. And it's the same with creative problems. It's the same with a scientist using dreams to help them to make connections. And people have done this. Same with creative thinkers like musicians or artists or whatever. If they are dreaming about the thing that they are doing during the day, they will come up with solutions in their dreams. And there are lots of very famous stories of people doing this, such as, I forget his name, but a Russian guy who invented the periodic table, and Matthew Walker talks about him a lot. And he very famously was agonizing over trying to organize all of the elements into some kind of organizational system for ages and ages and ages. And then one night, the periodic table came to him in a dream exactly as it is, except for one element was out of place. But everything else was exactly where it is. And he woke up and he replicated it, and there it was. That was a very famous example, but there's lots of other examples. And Edison and Einstein and all these other people used dreaming and used naps, especially, to try and harness the power of dreaming and dream state to help them creatively with problem solving. And another famous example that Matthew Walker brought up was Paul McCartney came up with Let It Be, the song. It just came to him in a dream. Mother Mary came to him, and it wasn't Mother Mary, the Catholic Mother Mary. It was his actual mother, who was named Mary, and she said to him, "Let it be." And the song was there, the tune was there, the words were there, and he woke up and he wrote it down. And there's a lot of musicians who apparently keep a guitar by their bed, or the piano's in their bedroom, and they'll wake up and they will have a song come to them in their sleep, and they'll write it down in the morning, and there it is. So don't take your dreams for granted. Also, let's talk about lucid dreaming, which is really interesting. So lucid dreaming is when you can control your dreams, and scientists have studied it, and it's true. People can lucid dream. They did this whole scientific study where they were able to communicate with lucid dreamers. But the problem with lucid dreaming is that it's not a very restful state. You're partially conscious, so you don't get as deep a sleep. It's not as restorative as normal sleep. So maybe not the best thing for every single night, but they think 10 to 20% of people can lucid dream. And I definitely have lucid dreamed and can relate to it not being a restful night's sleep, but a very interesting night's sleep, that's for sure. So yeah, so that's interesting if you can lucid dream. And I have a friend who lucid dreams, and she went on this whole retreat. I think she went to Hawaii or someplace like that, and she went on a retreat to learn how to control her lucid dreaming even more. So yes. And then Matthew Walker also says, when you wake up in the morning, because this state of REM sleep and dream sleep is so creatively rich, when you wake up in the morning, you are coming often out of this sleep, out of REM sleep, because it's most active towards the later half of the night. And you will wake up and you will still be in this kind of fog of REM sleep. You will still be in the milieu of REM sleep, and your brain will still be working creatively. So don't rush to get out of it, because also that's when ideas could come, connections could come for you. You might have processed something. You might just want to take time when you wake up and feel it. Feel it and see if anything comes to you. Anyway, I think that's a delicious way to end this podcast. Go forth and harness your creativity through the power of your dreams and your sleep. All right, guys, I think we need to wrap it up because it's been a long one. I apologize. I apologize to my sister that this is a TED Talk-ish podcast, but we'll be getting back to my midlife crisis now. Don't worry. I hope that this was helpful. I really enjoyed learning all about this, and I enjoyed trying to deliver it to you in some fashion that made sense. And sally forth now with all the sleep science and all the hygiene and see if you can't feel the benefit for every single aspect of your life. And share with other people. Please share with other people. My intention, my syncopa with this 3-part series was to make something useful, 3 episodes so that people like myself who want to fix their sleep, want to help themselves to feel better and improve their health, have a little bit of a kind of roadmap to explain everything succinctly. We're going to get back to my midlife crisis now, so buckle up again. Next episode, I'm going to take us right back to our storyline where we left off. Last time we talked we introduced Dr. K, and he is central to my understanding of purpose and fulfillment and my midlife crisis, walking through it and figuring things out. And we're going to talk more about manifestation and Dr. Tara Swart and what I learned from her. And we're going to get back to David Epstein a bit as well. And we're going to meet some psychopomps of money, because that is something that came up quite a lot and that I've figured out has been holding me back and creating a lot of stress and a lot of ill health. So we're going to talk about that as well. And hopefully by Easter, I'm going to tell you about the revelation that I had last Christmas, that propelled me into everything that I'm doing now. And yeah, that's where we're going. So I hope that it's going to be helpful and at least a bit entertaining. My life is an open book. My midlife crisis is just on display for all to see, and I'm not ashamed of any of it because it's been fabulous. All right, I will talk to you all soon. Please like, follow, subscribe, and share, and send me comments, send me little messages, contact me. I love to hear from you all. All right. May the Welly be with you, and may sleep be with you as well. And yeah, have some lovely dreams. Bye, guys.